Hello and welcome to another episode of Morgan in Bookland. I am very distracted because I got my haircut. I've never had it this short, I think ever. So I'm probably gonna, you know, be a little distracted this video, but it's fine. We're getting through the change. I love it, but it's pretty drastic. My hair's like usually like I think I got like 8 inches cut off. Anyway, not that you needed to know that, you are here to know about my book review of Bride. This is a book that I'm super excited to chat about. I couldn't wait to read it. It took me a little while to read it because I read on my Kindle, and I am a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, and so I tend to read what's available on Kindle Unlimited. I get a little anxious when it comes to paid books because I don't like buying the book and not knowing if I'm going to like it, which is why I love Kindle Unlimited so much. So this is a paid book, and I finally caved, and I got it. And then my husband bought me the book because he thought the cover looked nice, and he thought it would look nice on my shelf, and he's just the most amazing husband of all time. So anyway, I'm going to go over Bride, which I am super excited about. So let's dive in. Okay, so Bride. This was been getting a ton of hype on Book Talk, on Bookstagram, and I was like, you know what, I should just read it. So I know Ali Hazelwood is the author. She is a very popular rom com author. She wrote Love Theoretically. Else did she write? She's written a bunch of books that are like super. Oh, here we go. Love Theoretically, The Love Hypothesis. I feel like there was another book she wrote too, but they usually are. No, this is her first, at least as far as I understand it, her first try at anything in the fantasy genre. So let's get into it. So, Bride, what is this book about? So, first of all, this is a paranormal romance. And so kind of the difference between this and like other fantasy romance novels for the most part are very driven by plot, have lots of world building. And while the romance is there, usually the fantasy elements have a little bit more importance. Where in paranormal romance, it is a romance book that happens to be in the fantasy realm. So fantasy romance books tend to be more on the fantasy with a romance plot that of course we love. Paranormal romance, this is a rom-com. Truly, it's just a rom-com that happens to be fantasy, and it is also an urban fantasy, which was different for me. I have read urban fantasy before quite a bit, but it is far from my favorite. And I'll get into that during the review part, because right now we need to focus on what the heck is this book about. So Bride. This takes place again in our world, but in this version of our reality, there are werewolves, there are vampires, they hate each other, the humans are involved, there's these treaties that are going on, and to kind of keep the peace. However, the new like human, like not like the mayor, but like the leader of the humans in terms of how the alliance is kind of set up, has recently decided to do away with their alliance with the vampires. And so the vampires are a little nervous that it's going to be humans and werewolves versus vampires. So the vampires try to come up with something to be able to have a good relationship, a partnership, so to speak, with the werewolves. And because the werewolves and the vampires absolutely hate each other. It's definitely like Romeo and Juliet, the Montagues versus Capulets. Is that what it is? I hope I got that. I'm going to look it up. If I got that right, I'm going to give myself 5 points. The points don't matter, but it's fine. I'm going to give myself 5 points if I got that right. So the werewolves also have a new like head of the pack, who is really interested in peace, because right now the vampires are coming onto their land, killing a lot of their werewolf pups. So the vampires want an alliance for the sake of not feeling left out, feeling like not, out of fear, the humans and werewolves will kind of go against them, and join together. They don't want that bond to strengthen. And then the werewolves want it because the head werewolf guy, the alpha, just genuinely wants peace and is kind of done with the bloodshed between the groups. So that is what sparks the whole plot. So our two main characters are Misery and Lo. So Lo is the werewolf alpha, who is also the one. So kind of how they come up with is the standard, like, let's get married. Shocker, right? It's also called Bride, so I think we were expecting that, right? So a werewolf and a vampire agree to get married, and it have to be high up in society. the werewolf is the alpha. The alpha of the packs, of one of the packs, agrees to get married to someone important in the vampire community, because the whole point is that they kind of give someone over, kind of like holding collateral. So the vampire bride is gonna go live with the werewolves, and they kind of hold her as collateral. So if the vampires try to pull anything, they'll kill her. Same thing, they send a werewolf over to be with the vampires. Very interesting concept. Vampires are doing that with the humans previously. It was interesting. And so the vampire bride is the person. So the vampires used to have this setup with the humans, where a human child would go to live with the vampires and a vampire child would go to live with the humans. Both children had to be of importance. So they're stake in the game. I don't want to upset the humans because I don't want them to kill my child, kind of situation, right? So the vampire bride, in this situation, used to be the tribute to the humans. So she spent most of her life with the humans because her family gave her up to be like the vampire tribute. She's kind of weird. She's quirky. She doesn't really fit in. She has chosen to live her life not amongst the vampires, but she lives in with their humans. And so she is called in to be chosen to be the bride because she still is technically seen as someone of importance. And I can't say anything because it'll spoil it, but she definitely does not agree at first because she's like, I've already done this. I'm not doing it again. But then she finds something out and she's like, okay, I'll agree to this. So and then the plot is, of course, they get married, and what happens after they get married, trying to merge two completely different groups, learn about each other, and of course, lots of wit and banter and comedy along the way. There is another plot line that goes on, but I can't really say too much of that. I'm trying to look at the jacket to see if I can really say much about it. No. So it's mostly, again, this is a paranormal romance, which means the romance is the main point. So the plot outside of the romance isn't that grand or elaborate. But it's interesting, though. I enjoyed it. So my thoughts, kind of, and also general, like, what is it about? Like, who would like this book? So again, paranormal romance. So super romance is like the top thing. The love story is the top thing. Urban fantasy. So if you do not like books that are based in reality, do not pick up this book because it is based in reality. It's not super, they're on a helicopter, like planes at one, it's in reality. So if you don't like that, if you find that distracting, if you prefer like brand new worlds, might not be the best pick for you. It is a romantic comedy. It's not Grumpy Sunshine, but the alpha seems kind of grumpy. He's like definitely quieter, but the main character, she steals the show. She's like super quirky, and like she has said, like the banter that she had in this book, like the things that she would say, she kind of had like a dry sense of humor and like was a little bit self-deprecating at points, and like she would say lines that literally made me laugh and just made it, would point out the ridiculousness of things, but it made sense with the plot. It didn't, it wasn't like breaking the fourth wall, as you would say in film, kind of thing. But just the way she spoke and the way you got her internal thoughts and reviews of the situation, and like how she was like, because again, she's the one who moved into werewolf territory. It was just so fun to read. And like I said, I totally laughed out loud. So Rom Com, I actually am recommending this if you are a fantasy lover and you like romance. This is like a perfect beach read. If you wouldn't typically pick up a rom com because that's not your thing, but you want like a really good beach read that's more lighthearted or fun, this is the perfect book for you. This is going to check those boxes where it's a fun read, it's a quick read, it's only, like, as you can see, it's short. I keep looking at this, I want to see, okay, so it's just red there. I keep seeing the red and I'm like, is there an interesting thing underneath? No, it's just red. What was I saying? It's quick, very good banter. It's not going to take a lot of brain power to get through. It's super fun. It is unique. I always think it's interesting when authors go outside of their typical genres. And this is, Ali's first go at it, which I think is interesting. It also, I didn't know what the knot thing was until I read this, and people were, because that's one of the things that you see a lot. So there's definitely spice. But it's not like every chapter. It's definitely more towards, certain parts of the book. It's not like all the time, but it's definitely in there for sure. So if you don't like spice, don't read Ali Hazelwood in general, because I'm pretty sure all of her books are romance books that have spice. So yes, who would like this? Someone who loves fantasy and romance, who wants a light, easy read for the summer, who likes comedy. And like I said, what steals the show for this is the banter and just the inner dialogue. So it's not a plot driven book, although the plot is interesting. It's just what they're saying to each other, how they're saying it, the delivery. It was just spot on, so enjoyable. I typically wouldn't read rom-coms very much, especially if I have to pay for them. Again, Kindle Unlimited over here. But I definitely think I would read Ali Hazelwood after this, just because I really enjoyed the dialogue that much. Okay, review time. So I gave this a 3.75 out of 5, which is in my, I even like tiered my rating system out. That is in my an amazing book that I would recommend. So obviously it's not top tier, but I definitely would recommend this. I think it's fun. There's definitely an appropriate audience for it. Spice, it was hard because the spicy scenes were spicy, I guess, but there weren't, like I said, it's not that many in there. So I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 chili peppers. I think that's appropriate. I do think what's interesting in a lot of other books that I read, there's like this yearning, because this is enemies to lovers, like they hate each other. They're meant to, I mean, it's totally a Romeo and Juliet-esque type of situation too, except Romeo and Juliet loved each other from the beginning. No, these people do not like each other from the beginning. And so it is a true enemies to lovers, because I know if you've seen my show before, I get very picky about, usually when people say enemies to lovers, no, one person thinks they're enemies and the other person knows they're not. Like, I think if you read ACOTAR, this is a spoiler for A Court of Mist and Fury, so skip this if you haven't read it. If Rhysand is not her enemy, she thinks Rhysand is her enemy, but Rhysand knows Feyre's not her enemy. So it's an enemy. It's usually enemies to lovers is really a one-sided thing. This is a true two-sided enemies to lovers, which is enjoyable. I do really enjoy reading books that are enemies to lovers, where both parties are actually enemies of each other, and it's not just one feeling strong hatred. So I do definitely like that. So yes, very good, very enjoyable. So now and I said perfect read for the summer. So now we are entering spoilers. You have been warned. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Spoilers. Okay, so not many spoilers for this one. There were times, so my spoilers basically are like, there are times where I felt like the plot felt a little rushed. There were definitely gaps. Like I felt like the whole kidnapping of her friend, it kind of felt rushed towards the end of the book. And I know, again, it's a fantasy, it's a romance book first and foremost, so that plot takes second to it. But sometimes it felt a little too unfinished and rushed at points. Overall, I thought it was very good, but as someone who genuinely enjoys complex plots, it was a little too loosey-goosey for me, I would say. The other things that, spoilery, okay, it's the spicy scenes. So there's two things with the love story. So I loved how realistic and based in reality the story was. Like, it read like, it's based in reality, but how they get to know each other and talk to each other, I felt very genuine, and how people in actual society speak. Like in other books, they say like, you are the light of my life, I could never live my life without you, I would kill every single person who even so much as thinks about you. Like, people don't say that, right? But they say it in fantasy romance books. So the dialogue and the progression of the relationship felt really genuine, and that was really well done. I thought she did a great job. Where she really lost me, was frustrating, was obviously we know that they are mates. It's a one-sided mate relationship. I maybe should have talked that outside of the spoiler section, but I don't really want to ruin that. I feel like if you say that, then people know how it, anyway, I try not to talk about mate stuff too much, because I feel like that's too much of a spoiler just in and of itself. Like, if you have fated mates, don't tell me it's fated mates. Let me find that out and be like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Don't tell me on the jacket that it's fated mates. But anyway, I digress. I felt like it was so genuine and going so well. And then you get to that scene where they're like doing sexy stuff, and he's like, just kidding. We can't be together. I'm leaving you. And it just felt a little over dramatic. And I felt like it was very distracting, because then I felt like Lo's actions, we were getting into the realm of more fantasy romance, like over dramatic type of relationships. And so it just felt really out of place and out of character, and it kind of took me out of it a little bit. Also, the spicy scene at the end. Again, I don't care for spice. I don't dislike it. I don't like it. I just want it to be appropriate for the book. So again, if there's a book where every other chapter is spice, not my thing. If there's a book where there's like super mega yearning and then you never get the payout, essentially, I'm like, that's kind of disappointing that we don't get anything. But the end scene with the whole nodding thing. First of all, nodding isn't my thing. That's great if it's your thing, but I thought it was kind of funny. But I felt like when I was reading it that the main character, wasn't enjoying it, and it wasn't like a moment of like pure bliss or ecstasy. Like the way she was describing it was so like analytical, and I was like, it was just so bizarre because like clearly it's like the big payout scene, and it's the scene, right? And I just felt like the main character's reaction, it made it seem like it wasn't that great. And it kind of was like, yeah, we could do this. This could work. I don't know. So it was just a bizarre way that I feel like that scene was written. And it's interesting because I felt like it worked with her character and how Misery is very analytical and kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. But it also was weird because I was like, this is weird. I've never actually read a spicy scene where one character just doesn't seem that into it when they're supposed to be into it. So that was interesting, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. I don't know. I mean, I actually kind of am a fan because it's a talking point for me, and it's something that I will remember about this book. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Okay, so that was it. That was Bride. Let me know if you've read this. I hope you have enjoyed my video. Thank you for tuning in.